When religion and spirituality become, well, a business, the problem is they will be turned into something that will suit something else, probably a hidden agenda or a set of agendas, rather than what their design purpose would be. Now, when it comes to religion, religion is a set of beliefs in a way. It is a piece of meaning ultimately, but its purpose, well, let's say original purpose, is to remind people that there is something much greater beyond this mundane existence. It is a kind reminder to people that, well, there is way more to life. When it comes to spirituality, well, spirituality can easily be converted into a set of ideas and points of view and such, but spirituality is an ongoing process. It is something that goes on within each of us, irrespective of how much we believe in a religion or in a political movement or in anything that is, uh, well, worldly, let's say, in the end. The problem with religion and, well, spirituality, probably, let's say, philosophy, maybe psychology also to a certain extent, why not? The point with these is that these tend to be a bit, well, actually far more um, non physical, let's say. Non physical is not the best word, let's put it metaphysical maybe, or beyond a certain level of logics that the masses usually employ. Because religion may tell you that there is a God or a greater form of existence or of manifestation beyond you, and, well, that you have to do this, you have to act like this, you have to do that, whatever. But how many people have actually perceived that being, right? Or, well, creation itself? Because only by becoming sufficiently internal can one simply feel that. But when you look at religions, how they are nowadays, they're all about externalizing your energy, because you have to attend certain rituals, you have to listen to some other people, you have to go to a temple, you have to go to a church, whatever, a mosque. I'm not that familiar with religious customs and traditions, but ultimately it's all about focusing somewhat on the outside. It's like creation exists out there, but your senses, your physical senses, will never perceive creation. First and foremost, this is because of one's levels of ignorance. There are thousands of layers of ignorance until one reaches, the grand enlightenment and the such, when one becomes ready to simply transcend the cycles of life and death. But the point is, everyone sees everything around them. Yeah, sure, some people will have a different vision, maybe, like visually speaking, because of certain impairments or differences of their body. Like, for example, I'm not the kind to treat daltonism as an ailment or an impairment, but there are people who do, so I'm not good with expressing words in such situations. But irrespective of how people see things, the point is, once they see inanimate object or even animate beings, they kind of fail to see the life in them. Look, for example, at the violent history of each of the religions, right? Judaism by design tends to be in some of its parts very genocidal if one reads the Talmud and some other parts of it. Islam obviously had its own history of violence, and when we look at Christianity, well, it was expansionist for far less compared to Islam, but it was very expansionist towards the more modern times when more devastating weapons and better means of transportation were available. And the point is, um, when you look at these religions, it was not necessarily the religions themselves that led to that violence, but to them being transformed more or less into something we may call a business. Because everything that is harder to perceive through layers of logics, right, can easily be turned into, let's say, a business. Because the point is, if you can't easily prove it wrong, well, theoretically everything is right from a logical standpoint. Because you see religions talking about demons, you hear them talking about, salvation, angels, all sorts of benevolent beings, and everything seems to whirl around a single creation. But how much of it is entirely true in the end? Because we humans, or well, the ancestors of some people, actually wrote those books for us, and most likely they wrote those with a certain agenda. And religion itself, while it may be, let's say, something pure on paper, it doesn't mean that you cannot shape the beliefs and perceptions of the masses to believe it somehow. When you look at different religions, well, they all had one common misfortune. In a sick society, in a miserable society, everything that is created will lead ultimately towards the augmentation of the levels of misery, because misery can only exist by being sustained by its own, let's say, hosts. Imagine it like a parasite, and it dissipates slowly, but it also needs to feed on the host's energy, right? You see miserable people, the only thing they do, they just constantly invest into their misery, because this way it's like uh, misery is like a parasite that convinces you without it you're no longer gonna have the comfort zone you have, and without that you're reminded of at times the brutality of taking responsibilities, because to some people that feels very brutal. Yes, taking responsibility and no longer reacting emotionally and mentally to all sorts of stupid things, well, that seems very brutal to some people. That's why they enjoy the idea of comfort, because by being disconnected, by well, no longer being capable of realizing how much damage they cause to others, they just flow, they just go with the flow. And it's super easy because, well, theoretically you feel the pain deep down, but you're disconnected from your emotions, and you're still causing the damage by the pain that you're causing to yourself, but, well, your level of awareness doesn't allow that. This is the perfect situation for most people, because the lowest levels of ignorance can only be experienced until it hurts enough that you want to break out of them, right? The pain has to be much more than the ignorance levels, right? When we look, for example, at spirituality, spirituality is that which goes beyond the physical. It goes into understanding far greater layers of existence that religion may tell you, or philosophy may tell you, or in many cases even astrology, or, well, whatever other similar fields of study, let's call them so, may tell you. Even psychology, right? When you turn them into business, the biggest problem of something being turned into a business is not necessarily that it fulfills, well, it always ends up fulfilling an agenda, but the point is it can also be adapted and changed from the truth. And you can only understand that in a sick society everything will be shaped away from the truth. See, when it comes to religion, when religion becomes a business in a sick society, when anything becomes a business, not just religion, it will be only focused on supporting the ignorance and the misery of people. Because by doing this, you're going to keep people miserable, and they're going to keep seeking a way out, while you yourself can show yourself as the so-called way out. But at the same time, you're going to exploit their previous lifetimes of karma regarding self-sabotage, being treated badly, and as such. And when people embrace their comfort zone, well, that's going to become a death spiral, because not only will they treat themselves poorly, but when you teach them that God wants you to suffer, because it doesn't matter how much you suffer in this life, you're gonna have everything that you need in the next life, or in the eternity that comes after this life. You're programming people for misery, right? You're programming people even more to embrace the misery and the unworthiness that they feel, right? And the next lives is gonna be harder to pull out of. That's why we have so many unfortunate souls coming in, life after life after life again, trying to, cure that. But religion has been used as a business for thousands of years already, right? They were shaped to make you believe certain other things. History has also been altered. Don't believe much that is given in your books. See, the world has been shaped to function only and aggressively only on the idea of let's say the mental, right? The idea of logicality and the intellect, accumulating data and fighting for that data, because that is the weakest point of the human. See, philosophy, psychology, spirituality, and well, let's also include religion, they're all based on seeking, right? You seek something which is beyond you. And well, philosophy may rely a lot on logics to a certain extent, but the point is, when you move outside of the logics that we are so um, poisoned with nowadays, you will start realizing that the logics you are programmed with are not necessarily the same logics of the reality we live in, right? Once your history is changed, well, if you don't know your history, you're always gonna be a part human, because once you don't know your history, you're easily programmable to think whatever else. Nowadays, you have so many people being thought wrong things about their own country, so they end up hating their own country as well, and their own people, their own nation, let's say. But when you hate a nation based on pure meaning, well, that's just self-imposed misery for nothing. Because when you impose misery upon yourself through something, that you feel guilty for something that happened, well, you don't know for sure that it happened. What happened back in the times, you don't need to feel guilty about it, because it happened in between our ancestors. Whatever genocides, crimes, murders, or good things happened, it was only in between our ancestors. We just need to learn and see if we can peek into those historical moments, into the real ones, not in the invented ones. And well, whoever controls the history controls the future also. But when you can understand that all those bad things happened because the awareness of our ancestors was much less, you start distancing yourself slowly and surely from the pains that you self-inflict. When all of these fields of study that I presented, well, shortly, become a business, the problem is, once they are a business, what a business means is someone sooner or later will have a monopoly over it. If you see in the collapse of Catholicism in Western Europe, it is because the Zionist ancestors have been infiltrating Christian churches for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And they're willing to do that the same with Orthodoxy, because Zionism sees Christianity as its arch nemesis. It doesn't care much about Islam because it knows Islam is easy to control. And well, given its aggressive past and its tendency towards oppression and aggressiveness. And I say about these because this is how Islam is propelled. It's not necessarily Islam itself, but a lot of the authorities use, some of these measures to reinforce their own religion. When you're afraid of losing your own religion or any kind of meaning, when you're afraid of something, anything, you acknowledge, at least indirectly if you're ignorant, you acknowledge that that is much better. When people suffer because of how religion is implanted, or because of their culture, or whatever, they will always think the grass is greener on the other side. So people may unfortunately end up thinking that someone else's religion is better. And there will come a time when a lot of people will simply swap their own current religion to someone else's, right? So when something becomes a business, someone sooner or later will have monopoly over it. Now you see, the Holocaust and anti-Semitism seem to be propelled as the new worldly religion, because well, the Zionists have taken everything they have, well, most of it, from the Jewish people. Their Zionism is based off of the Judaism religion, and well, also on the more modern version of Satanism, that which they also kind of adapted to their own needs. And this is a big problem. When something becomes a business, well, a lot of people will suffer, because first and foremost, business means something that suits me or my group or whatever, and it doesn't matter almost at all, it doesn't matter to how much extent it is to the detriment of others. When you look at the richest people in the world, they may be creating all sorts of work jobs for people, But miserable people will not be happy without a job. They won't be happy with a job either. They will actually be even more miserable. When you look at the greatest corporations, they're draining the whole planet out. They're leaving a lot of misery and poverty behind. Yet they're making and draining more and more money. And ultimately, the question is, why do these Zionists actually need more and more money? Because they've been printing money ever since the 77s in the USA. And none of the fortunes they have are actually necessarily acquired. They just have printed all the money, and well, should they even lack money or think they lack, they will print even more, right? This has led to so much poverty in the world, because when you bombard the world with so much money, then there is a question: why is America so poor, right? Why are people struggling in there? Because yes, there are people who are paid well, but how many of those, right? And you look at a lot of USA's troubles, societally speaking, right? They lack good care systems and, well, so many more other problems. Uh, that is a big problem. When things become a business, look at the world, right? The healthcare has become a business. When healthcare and even schooling systems have become a business, well, it means someone will sooner or later have a monopoly over those. And as we can see, the Zionists claim somewhat a monopoly already, because they're imposing their own agendas in universities in America, and they want that in universities in Europe as well. And they want everyone to simply function and, breathe and think the same. That's basically communism. It is a golden dream of humanity if done in a conscious way, but it is obviously the most hideous nightmare if done in misery, and we live in a miserable world. So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferenjan Board signing out.